So yours is a remarkable country. That I can't think of any other country in the world which has actually defeated in the battlefield 3 permanent members of the Security Council. First, French, Dien Bien Phu, the Americans, and then the Chinese in the 1978-79 war. What do you think is there about the Vietnamese people that you can mobilize them on this scale?
Chúng tôi vì cái độc lập, tự do của dân tộc.
So we have been struggling for our independence and freedom throughout the years, protracted years of the slavery yoke and also dependent state. So after the end of the World War II, when the German and Japanese forces surrendered, this is a very great opportunity for Vietnamese people. And at the time, the President Ho Chi Minh had called on the Vietnamese people to stand up to gain the independence. That was also a new mark in our long history to continue with our traditional of our ancestors for the national defending and construction. So with the tradition and also the will to defend our nation, we have been resolved to struggle and to defend our independence. According to the President Ho Chi Minh's teaching, nothing is more precious than independence and freedom.
Sir, did you ever have a chance of working with President Ho Chi Minh? What kind of a man was he?
Tôi có một cái cơ hội và cũng là một.
I also had an opportunity, and it was very lucky to me also that I had a chance to meet President Ho Chi Minh in late 1950, at the time when our Communist Party was preparing for the second Congress. That was the time when I was still very young, and at the time I represented a party organization of a province in the south.
Quan tâm bồi dưỡng cái lớp trẻ của cán bộ trẻ của Việt Nam.
And President Ho Chi Minh, all the way, he is very modest, and he was also very considerate and very cares for training for the younger generation, for the younger cadres of Vietnam.
Prime Minister, the Security Council was structured on the basis of the fact that the Allies had won World War II, and they were the ones who constituted the Security Council. They added China later on. But subsequently, Vietnam defeated 3 permanent members in the battlefield, in war, 3 distinct wars. So there is a lack of logic about the manner in which the Security Council is structured today. How can this lack of logic be corrected?
Chúng tôi đánh giá là cái vai trò của Liên Hợp Quốc đối với trong cái cộng đồng của thế giới. Cái vai trò của Liên Hợp Quốc cũng đã góp phần.
We are of the view that the United Nations also, to some extent, play a role in settling and tackling with some issues in the world as well as in some regions. And at the moment, we think that up to now, the United Nations also, to some extent, is positive involvement in some issues. And as India, Vietnam also is a member of this organization. However, the world political situation after the World War II, especially after the Cold War, has changed basically. Therefore, we need the United Nations need to have a reform in order to be adaptable to the new situation. And the structure of the Security Council of the United Nations at the moment is still too narrow, and it is not suitable. Therefore, we share also the opinion with India that it needs to have the reform.
Ấn Độ có những cái điểm đồng đối với cái sự cần thiết phải có cái đổi mới như thế nào, cải tổ thế nào.
So how is your mind working on this issue? In your list, who should be the permanent members of the Security Council?
Chúng tôi nghĩ rằng làm thế nào cái Hội đồng Bảo an nó phản ánh.
I think that the structure or the new membership of the Security Council should have the representation by each region as well as by the countries, group of countries having the entertaining different levels of development.
Nếu những nước chỉ những nước phát triển hoặc là chỉ những nước lớn thì cái đó không phù hợp với cái tình hình Việt Nam của thế giới.
And it is not suitable to the present international situation when the Security Council only represents the big powers as well as the developed countries.
So let me clarify my point. There are two distinct issues. One is the permanent membership of the Security Council. The other is the non-permanent issue, in fact, in which you supported us recently. Taking these apart, what is your stand on both these issues?
Cũng như cái thành viên không thường trực mà vừa rồi Ấn Độ và một số nước ứng cử vào thành viên không thường trực.
And as we have supported India toward its candidature to become the non-permanent member of the Security Council recently, I think that India has played an important role and also has some active contribution to our region. Therefore, I think that we also evaluate and highly consider India for its contribution and its participation in the region affairs.
Ấn Độ vừa là cái vai trò, cái vị trí của Ấn Độ đối với khu vực này, mà còn là Ấn Độ còn là thành viên có một cái vị trí rất quan trọng trong phong trào.
So India not only play an important role in the region, but also a very important role in the non-aligned movement.
Sir, India and Vietnam shared the same anti-colonial, anti-imperialist platform during the Cold War. But now that the Cold War is over, what is it that sustains this relationship, or should sustain this relationship?
Hai nước Việt Nam với Ấn Độ là một cái quan hệ lâu đời và có thể trải qua những cái thử thách rất đặc biệt.
So the relations between Vietnam and India has dated back since long, and those relations have been tested by time.
Và Việt Nam trong những cái lúc mà Việt Nam chúng tôi
during the time when the Vietnamese people were still faced with the paramount difficulties and trials, always we could find beside us the Indian friends and among other friends in the world.
Cái quan hệ không phải là trong cái quan hệ nó bình thường mà đã trải qua những cái sự thử thách và luôn luôn giữa Việt Nam và Ấn Độ được củng cố.
So
và được
the relations between Vietnam and India have undergone many trials and hardships and has been tested by time with the high mutual trust. And so at the moment, under the new circumstances, we have more favorable conditions to strengthen and develop our relations between the two countries for the multi-faceted cooperation, not only for the interest of the two countries, but also for the interest of the region.
Lại càng có những cái điều kiện để phát triển, để hợp tác trên nhiều mặt giữa Việt Nam và Ấn Độ, không những lợi ích của hai nước mà còn đối với khu vực cũng như đối với thế giới.
We are of the view that under the new world circumstances and the common trend in the world, this will help to create more favorable conditions to develop the relations between Vietnam and India.
Vì trước đây đó, thế giới chia nhiều cái
So different from the past situation where the world and even in the regions have been characterized by the confrontation. So at the moment, the situation in the world as well as the region are the cooperation and the co-development.
Cùng phát triển. Thì đấy là những cái nhân tố mà có thể nó thuận lợi cho cái mối quan hệ giữa hai nước.
Sir, ever since your economic reform started, you have had $25 billion worth of foreign investments, and yet Indo-Vietnamese trade is about 150 million. I mean, this is a pathetic figure. What do you propose to do to give it some kind of a fillip?
Chúng tôi cũng có dịp trao đổi với các vị lãnh đạo của Ấn Độ và các cái đoàn ở cấp chính phủ, và kể cả chúng tôi trao đổi.
We also, concerning this issue, we also have chances before to exchange and to discuss with the leaders of the government of India as well as with the ambassador of India to Vietnam. We are of the view that the trade and the investment cooperation between countries are not up to the level of the political relations and the friendly relations between the two countries, as well as not up to, in comparison with the assistance from India to Vietnam in terms of the scientific and technological cooperation as well as in training. However, we still have time, like the visit paid by the Prime Minister of India to Vietnam in the past, and my visit to India in the time to come will have to strengthen the relations of the cooperation, multi-sided cooperation between the two countries, and think that we have time to strengthen. And I think the two governments of India and Vietnam also wish for the strengthened cooperation. However, the economic cooperation to some extent depends also on the businessmen. Like Indian government, the Vietnamese government always create the favorable conditions to the enterprises and companies to contact with the Indian counterpart to study and also the seeking the possibility for the cooperation.
So in your perception, now that the Cold War has ended, is the world more secure or more insecure now?
Chúng tôi nghĩ rằng chiến tranh lạnh được kết thúc. Đó là một
Our position is that the ending of the Cold War is very lucky to the world in general. However, what happens to the post-Cold War situation, so the Vietnam like any other countries in the world, is very much interested in the happenings after the end of the Cold War.
Các nước đó, riêng Việt Nam và đối với nhiều nước cũng rất quan tâm. Điều đó nó cũng xảy ra, có những khu vực mà tới bây giờ chúng ta đều quan tâm.
In many regions now, there's been instability, and without the self-refraining, and if the major powers does not stop their manipulation or calculation, that could lead to the instability in many regions.
Thì tình hình nó cũng rất dễ dẫn đến cái sự phức tạp, không những là trong khu vực mà có thể đây nó đòi hỏi mỗi nước đều phải có một cái sự nỗ lực lớn, tích cực đóng góp vào của khu vực cũng như của thế giới.
And this required the great efforts to be made by every country to contribute to the security of the region. And the countries in the world should cooperate each other to settle any bilateral or multilateral issues through peaceful negotiation.
Thì cái điều đó nếu như tất cả đều có cái sự cố gắng như thế thì sẽ góp phần tích cực vào cái sự ổn định của khu vực cũng như của thế giới.
History tells us that Sino-Vietnamese relations have been riddled with conflict and trauma. Why are you so sanguine about the future now?
Chúng tôi cũng phải nói rằng cái
So in this respect, the story of the kings and of the other circles of the Chinese and Vietnamese in the past has been dated back far in the past. However, since the days when the two countries had gained independence and freedom, and we still have the good relationships, and the Vietnamese government and people also highly appreciate China government and people for their valuable assistance in our struggle to gain the independence and freedom. Throughout the war of our resistance against the American to liberate the South, the Chinese peoples always extended their support to our people.
So Vietnam is the only communist country in the ASEAN grouping. What do you see as the future of communism in the 21st century?
Trong cái nguyên tắc, như là một nguyên tắc ở trong ASEAN là hợp tác trong đa dạng. Yeah.
So as a principle of ASEAN association, we will have the cooperation in the diversity.
Tôn trọng thể chế, tôn trọng chủ quyền, độc lập của mỗi nước.
We respect the institution and the sovereignty of each member country.
Cho nên trong đó có quân chủ, có cộng hòa, có cộng sản.
So we see that in the ASEAN countries we have every regimes from the communist, the republic, and
Democratic.
Yeah.
Đó là sự chọn lựa của dân tộc của mỗi nước, và dân tộc chúng tôi.
So this is the choice of each nation, as our President Ho Chi Minh has raised the banner and the motto that the national solidarity is the decisive factor for our nation to come up with every success, to win, especially to win the two big powers in the world. And we will try to follow his teaching to build our country into a strong, rich people, strong country, just and civilized society.
Xã hội công bằng văn minh. Cái chọn lựa của mỗi dân tộc về cái thể chế của mình thì Việt Nam chúng tôi xác định như thế. Và như vậy thì các cái quốc gia khác, các dân tộc khác của các nước cũng tự mình chọn cho mình một cái thể chế thích hợp. Chúng tôi hoàn toàn tôn trọng cái chủ quyền độc lập của mỗi nước và không can thiệp bất cứ cái điều gì đối với dân tộc khác.
Prime Minister, you are one of the main authors of economic reforms in this country. In your recent party congress in June, you analyzed the performance of the last 5 years and you projected for the future. Now, what strategy do you propose to sustain this amazing, I think it was 8% rate of growth over the past few years?
Ở cái chỗ là đánh giá.
At each congress, we had a chance to review the last period as well as to identify the strategies and the goals for the next periods. Therefore, the 8th Congress of the Vietnam Communist Party is of great importance. We have reviewed the 10 years of renewal to identify the new direction and the strategies for the next period, and in order to overcome the consequences left by the war as well as the shortcomings and the weaknesses of the old mechanism, and with the aim to strengthen the development and to alleviate the poverty and reduce the hunger, and to curb the inflation as well as in order to help Vietnam to escape from the social and economic crisis.
How do you, as a statesman, visualize what role do you see for India within the SAARC region and between SAARC and ASEAN?
Chúng tôi cho rằng là cái vai trò của Ấn Độ không những là Nam Á, mà vai trò của Ấn Độ đối với cả Đông Nam Á.
So we are of the view that the Indian will play the important role not only in SAARC, in South Asia, but also in the other regions like the Southeast Asia.
Tôi nghĩ rằng
Southeast Asia.
Tôi nghĩ vai trò Ấn Độ còn rộng lớn hơn nhiều.
So, to my opinion, the Indian will play a greater role in the future.
Và cái sự thành công của công cuộc cải cách của Ấn Độ, chúng tôi đang rất vui mừng và chia sẻ cái sự thành công đó.
And we are also very delighted to learn that the Indian has been successful in carrying out its reform.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you very much.